Outstanding. All right, next big name I want to talk about that probably isn't coming to Pittsburgh, but has been named a possibility to come to Pittsburgh. Dalvin Cook, who is expected to be released by 4 o'clock this afternoon from the Minnesota Vikings. I wrote a story yesterday about how terrifying that is for a name like Najee Harris, who's got to be looking at his NFL career going, I'm not going to make any money. Like, this is, my pretty much over after this one. Because if Dalvin Cook, a four times back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher, the healthiest he's ever been, 27 years old, getting cut because they won't pay him, very scary. Joy Taylor of FS1 went on and said that the Steelers could be a name to watch for Dalvin Cook after he hits free agency. I don't want to bag on Taylor. I don't want to criticize her, but this is what she had to say, and we could pick it apart from there. Quote, I think he would be very interesting with the Steelers. When you think of the Steelers' offensive identity, they always have fast, big wide receivers and a solid running game. Now they have Najee Harris, but it's a 2-back system anywhere you go. You don't really want to wear someone down. So in a 2 running back system, a creative offensive coordinator, you can really utilize someone like Dalvin Cook. 2 takeaways here. 1, I didn't know that Matt Canada was a creative offensive coordinator. 2, totally forgot Jaylen Warren left and never came back. So the Steelers clearly only have 1 running back. I mean, Dalvin, I'm going to ask you this again, just like I do it. Is Dalvin Cook coming to Pittsburgh? And does it make any sense for Dalvin Cook to come to Pittsburgh?
Yeah. I was surprised that I didn't see this before we literally jumped on for this, but I did not see people asking about Dalvin Cook. But it's kind of funny that it did happen. I'll say, obviously, no, he's not going to come to Pittsburgh, but it is kind of interesting to look at just some similarities. I've talked a lot about how different the Vikings are schematically from the Steelers in terms of on defense, like how big of an adjustment it's going to be for Chandon Sullivan, for Patrick Peterson. But just full disclosure, there is some carryover with the running game, just because Dalvin's always been a really good zone runner, at least from my perspective. If you are curious, like outside zone, Najee Harris led the NFL last year with 98 carries on outside zone, and second was Dalvin Cook with 89. Okay. So there is some carryover in terms of like what those guys are used to doing. One thing about Dalvin, just as a player, I know that the efficiency numbers and the advanced metrics like have pretty much all destroyed him since last season. Just that he's getting up there in terms of total touches, in terms of, maybe age. I know 27, I guess it's old for a running back now.
It's old for a running back.
But Dalvin's offensive line, like, I don't think did him a ton of favors, similar to where we kind of the way that we were talking about Najee Harris last year as well. Like, I think he was hit at the line or behind the line of scrimmage on over 40% of his carries last year.
Dalvin or
not
Najee?
Dalvin. So
Yikes.
Not great. Dalvin still has, the breakaway speed. I know he did break a couple of long runs, at least in the games that I watched.
Yep.
But the Steelers, I don't know what they're gonna do for the RB3 spot, but it doesn't need to be Dalvin Cook.
It's gonna be Dalvin Cook.
Yeah,
there's no way it's gonna be Dalvin Cook.
I don't think that that's necessarily something that they need. Now, am I gonna would I turn my nose up at Dalvin Cook for like cheap? No, but like at the same time, I think he's gonna get something reasonable for like a 1 or maybe 2-year deal somewhere to be like a starter, at least like the 1B type of guy. And he's not going to be that here, I don't think. So
no. The Steelers don't have, first off, the Steelers have no cap space left, so they'd have to create cap space for a running back 3. You essentially at that point just tell Najee Harris, see you later, buddy. Like, you're not getting another contract. It's all over. And Jaylen, I don't even know what you do with Jaylen. Like, what do you do with Jaylen? Jaylen Warren's making $300,000 this year, and you're going to go sign cheap. Another running. He's the cheapest option. He is the best option in the NFL. Like, he really is the best. You look at that guy's contract. He's got 2 years left on it. Neither of them hit $1 million. That is, and like, if the Steelers decided that he's a starter, I don't think a lot of people will complain. Like, I think they'd be like, yeah, give him a shot. Best option in the NFL. Dalvin Cook. There's zero chance he's coming to Pittsburgh. Like, absolutely zero. Now, I think worst case scenario is he possibly ends up in the AFC, which it looks like he's going to do. And that stinks for the Steelers long term, especially when they hit the playoffs and they got to play some of these teams. My dad's a Broncos fan. He texted me immediately and was like, when Dalvin Cook ends up in Denver, we're winning the Super Bowl. And I was like, maybe you might actually. That being said, to transition into, actual Steelers news here, Jaylen Warren talked about how they're already working on him and Najee getting on the field together in 2 running back sets. You had a field day with that one on Twitter saying, oh, yeah, it's a little early for these 2 running back set talk, blah, blah, blah. I thought it would be earlier or later than last year. Do you expect a change, or you just, or do you really laugh it off and just say this is not going to happen?
It's funny to me because we talk about some of the same stuff every offseason. It just always kills me. Like I think I'm going to, in the next couple of weeks, put together like a bingo card for Steelers offseason talking points. And it's like we hit another one. I think it was my guy Nick was talking about a day or two ago, was talking about they were talking about the increase in play action. And I was like,
oh yeah, there we go. On his takeaways.
Yeah, mark another one off on the Steelers bingo. It's just like the same things that we talk about every offseason. I feel like increased play action, increased motion, the 2 running back or pony sets. It's like
work over the middle of the field, wild card.
They sometimes it just depends on when they get talked about, but they always get talked about this time of the year, and it's just funny to me. I mean, they did do a little bit of it down the stretch. I mean, I remember one play where they had Jaylen split out wide. I think they gave him a jet sweep, but it's just, I don't think that the 2 back sets are going to be something that's going to be like a major component of the offense. I mean, I don't know anyone in the NFL that's really using them a ton like that. Mm-hmm. For me, it would be more interesting if like they went to the more like 21 personnel. I think they could get kind of weird and do some 21 personnel stuff and use Connor Hayward as a fullback. If we're talking about getting real weird, that would be what my version of real weird would be, is use Connor at fullback, and then your 2 tight ends be Washington, Freiermuth, and then, Deontay George at receiver. And then you come out like that, you get 4-3-3-4 base defense personnel on the other side, and then you go empty.
Yep.
And because that's the thing, like you can put Freiermuth, obviously he basically a slot receiver, but you can split, you can keep either Hayward or Washington in line, or put one or the other in the slot, and then you can go empty, and then you're going to get favorable matchups with one of your tight ends on a linebacker or a safety. So if we're talking about getting real weird, that would be what I'd be interested in. As far as like the pony sets and stuff like that, I don't know. I think it's just something that people like to talk about. I don't really know why. If somebody knows why, they can drop a comment. But
people do. They just want the star power. You know what I mean? Everybody wants the star power on the field, which is something good to have. What do you think is not a realistic number? What is, if you were utilizing the Steelers offense, if you were calling the plays, what would your split be between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren?
I mean, Jalen's still going to probably be the 3rd down guy, right? Like he's going to be the primary 3rd down guy, like pass protector, 3rd and long situation guy.
But you look at that as just like like, is that how you would run it? Najee first down, he's the 3rd down guy.
65-35.
Yeah, I feel
something
like that's
like that.
Number.
I mean, I think that is realistic. I mean, you can give Jaylen like every 3rd series, and then he plays in 3rd and long situations, and then Najee gets the goal line work. I mean, I think that's a pretty solid split. I mean, you talked a little bit about Najee and just running backs in general, like the shelf life for them. I mean, those guys, they're in a really difficult situation, right? Like teams aren't really wanting to pick those guys in the 1st round anymore.
Yep.
It's not smart. Like even the good running backs, like your Dalvin Cooks, your Zeke Elliott's, like it's not smart to get those guys to your second contracts, because by the time they're in year 2 of the contract, they're getting released and cut. Yep. So it's difficult because these teams, they just wear them down, and then their rookie deals up, and they are forced to go elsewhere and play for pennies on the dollar. Yep. So they're in a difficult spot. But maybe I actually wrote about this in my running back preview. Maybe Jaylen, coming on and being a real good surprise for the Pittsburgh organization. Maybe that actually helps Najee prolong his career. Najee's a guy who touched the ball a ton at Alabama. He had 300+ touches in both of his first 2 seasons with the Steelers.
Dude, he's at like 600 touches or something. 700 touches.
maybe Jalen coming along and taking, 35% of that timeshare for the next 2 years. Maybe that does allow Najee to play into like his late 20s and still be, a relatively productive player. Because, I mean, really over the past like decade and a little bit over that, probably, like, who are the guys that have proven to be like effective, like really, really effective and efficient, like into their late 20s? I mean, it's really like it's Derrick Henry, it's Adrian Peterson. I mean, those guys are probably, you can pretty comfortably call them the exceptions, not the rule, right? We've got a lot of evidence that this doesn't happen for, the 95% of running backs that we see,
Yeah. What is the what do you think the change there is? Because like remember back in the day, like remember growing up, running backs ran what seemed to be it was a much more physical game, I guess. You were getting, but like, dude, Willis McGahee would play with like broken ribs, played into his 30s. Fred Jackson played 400 years in the NFL, successful every one of them. Adrian Peterson's 38 years old. People are still talking about him coming back for another NFL season. Like, at what point? Like, what has changed? Like, how is Zeke 27 years old, doesn't have legs anymore? Dalvin Cook's coming off 4,000-yard years. He's apparently done. Saquon, Josh, all these guys. Like, what is going on? What is the NFL? What is the change in the NFL?
That's a really good point. I don't know the answer on why that is, why running backs just don't seem to, like, I guess, last as long. But then again, like I think we look at efficiency numbers differently than like back in the day. And maybe that's why teams are like more proactive on predicting like decline for those type of runners. Mm-hmm. But it is a different game. Like you look at like Curtis Martin, it's like a Hall of Fame back, right? Like, but he averaged like 4.0 yards per carry. Like that's just what he did. Like I think Bettis finished his career under 4 yards per carry. Like now, like if you're a guy that averages 4 yards a carry, like you're looked at like a bum. You know what I'm saying? Like just because there's so many guys that, are explosive in their rookie deals and they go for, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 yards per carry. And then, they just don't last. And I just think, obviously with the game being more like spread out and, the things that we really prioritize with running backs now, the ability to catch the ball, the ability to pass protect is more important than getting 27, 28 carries. Like nobody's running an offense like that anymore. And I also think that, and this is just me, like maybe just galaxy brain and stuff, but I also think that like kids coming up now, they play more ball. So I think there's more wear and tear on guys maybe. And with AAU and, there's AAU football. I know everybody's probably seen the tweet about that AAU league that's like starting up, which I have some feelings about that. I think that is dumb, I don't know. So there's like a new like AAU league, like high tier, like AAU league that's like starting up. That's basically going to be it's the off season for regular fall football.
That's awful.
Basically you're going to be having kids that are in high school that are trying to get recruited by these big programs. They're going to be playing, tackle football for 9 months out of the year. Like
that can't happen. What are you doing? What are you?
It's the worst thing.
At 35 years old.
But like that's the thing though. Like their AAU football is not. I mean, this isn't the start of that. I just think it's the next step of it. But a lot of these guys, even like Najee. I mean, Najee had a ton of touches in college. If you play like 4 years in college and you're like the workhorse back. I mean, you think back to like some of those Wisconsin backs. In the 2000s. Guys like that would touch the ball like crazy, like 400 or 500 times. And it's just, I think that by the time a lot of those guys get to the NFL, it's just, they've already got, freaking 1,000 plus, couple, like 1,500 plus touches. And it's tough. There's been like studies and stuff, like analytical studies that pretty much say, like, I think the number is like 1,200, I want to say, like 1,200 carries or 1,200 touches, or maybe it's like 15. It's somewhere in that 12 to 15 range, and that's where like running back efficiency starts to just kind of like fall off a cliff, you know. And that's
Najee's about 400. Najee's a season away from that.
So
that's like actually,
but I think like that was the thing, like with Najee too. With even when they picked him in the first round, I think he was a 24-year-old rookie. So like, I mean, 24-year-old rookie with 4 seasons of wear and tear at Alabama. I mean, it was unrealistic to ever think that he was going to play beyond like the 5th-year option, because at that point, you know, he's 29 years old. I mean, who's a 29-year-old workhorse running back or even starting running back in the league right now other than Derrick Henry? I mean, maybe Najee ends up like Derrick Henry and he's just a monster going forward. I don't think that's no disrespect to Najee, but Derrick Henry, just like I said, I think there's usually, it just seems like in the past decade or two, there's usually one exception to the rule, and everybody else, it just kind of, after that point, it's just, you know, they're just are what they are, and they're just kind of a backup.
Yeah, it just falls off. It does suck.
You can't make any money. You can't make any money. Like they're getting screwed on their rookie deal. Teams are literally basically abusing them, and you know. But it is what it is. I don't know what the solution to that problem is, at least from their perspective. But.
No, I don't either. I wrote about that yesterday in the Dalvin Cook Najee thing, is that I don't know how you fix it, but I think that running backs have to figure out a way to fix it, because a lot of guys, you're going to start coming up into college and say, I'm not playing running back, I'm playing wide receiver.
Yeah.
Or,
I wonder, I just, something that I've always thought of, like, you know, we have like proven performance, like escalators and stuff, and like rookie deals, but like, I wonder if running back, if that's something like we need to look at and say, all right, like for that specific position, maybe it's an extra, you know, 100,000 or 250,000 if you go over, you know, 1,500 scrimmage yards, something like that, just because to make something that, you know, 250,000 is not going to make or break an NFL organization, even from a salary cap perspective. And you know, at the end of the day, like, these guys have such short shelf lives. Some of these guys aren't even getting, like, their second contract is a veteran minimum deal. So, you know, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know what the answer is, but they're getting put in a really tough situation. So.
Yeah, it does. It stinks. And we'll talk about that more as, you know, Najee's got a whole year ahead of him after this one before the contracts, but it's a tough time for him. And we've talked about this before, and we'll talk about it more, is that he is in probably the worst situation when it comes to a running back, and all this news is not helping him. With that, we're heading out of here.